Cole Palmer is literally saving Chelsea right now.
It's giving it away, and it's the most extraordinary.
He is the only one in the whole team who is carrying them to be somewhat competitive. You have to feel for the dude. Bench for the England national team, comes in as a sub, seems like he saved them in the Euros final with a banger, but then England loses. Now he returns back to Chelsea, and after $1 billion spent in the transfer window, he still has received zero support. Talents like Palmer are designed to be nurtured and supported with a solid team around them, but Bowley is killing the growth of the club. These guys only want to make as much profit as they can, collecting young players with potential like it's Football Manager instead of making signings that can help the team right now. Palmer does have some support. Gusto is one of the few Chelsea signings to actually get better after arriving. He's one of the best right backs in the league, and he has to be, because unfortunately, Reece James is made of glass. I feel bad for the guy. I mean, I don't really think it's his fault. Maybe he put on too much muscle in previous years. Who knows? Reece James is amazing when he's healthy, but nowadays, it's so far and few when he's actually injury-free. Lavia was injured all season, but is looking good. His presence should help a lot of the midfield issues, considering neither Caicedo nor Enzo is a traditional 6. But again, one injury to Lavia and the midfield is in shambles again. Caicedo and Enzo are quality players, but when you look at the price tags paid for them, they gotta do a lot more. Nkunku is back from injury and he's going to provide a little bit of hope along with Mew signing Pedro Neto, but that's pretty much where the hope ends. Pedro Neto is a weird signing. A very good player, played fantastic for Wolves, but he's very injury prone. Since the 2021 season, Neto has missed a combined 102 matches for Wolves. That's over 500 days spent on the sideline. Then you have the fact that Neto likes to operate in the same spaces as Palmer, both left-footed guys that love to cut in from the right. You can play Palmer down the middle, but then where do you play Nkunku? Feel like the left wing position should have been a bigger priority given the fact that Mudryk and Sterling have struggled, especially since you have Madueke that can play right wing as well. It seems that the Chelsea squad is based on a lot of ifs. If Lavia stays healthy, if Pedro Neto stays fit, if Colwell and Fofana can stay fit. The owners are very lucky that Palmer has turned into a superstar. It saved them from complete humiliation from the fans. With 27 goals and 14 assists, Palmer is the Blues' first superstar since the departure of Eden Hazard and Frank Lampard. Palmer was the only player with 20 plus goals and 10 plus assists in the 2024 Premier League season. He had the most goals in a Chelsea debut season, most goals at Stamford Bridge in a season, Golden Boot runner-up, assist leader runner-up, second youngest player ever with 20 plus goals and 10 plus assists, third Chelsea player ever with 20 goals and 10 assists, first Chelsea player with multiple hat-tricks, first Chelsea player with double-digit goals and assists in first season, Premier League Young Player of the Year. A magical season, carrying Chelsea on his back at times. He gave the fans a reason to be excited and optimistic for the upcoming season. The owners need to start taking his performances seriously because the state of the team right now isn't great. 43 players in the squad, 10 signings, and €185 million spent, but has actual quality been added to the team? They now basically have 8 goalkeepers and a bunch of young kids with very little senior experience. For example, Aaron Anselmino, who was signed from Boca Juniors for £15.6 million, literally has only started 6 games of senior football. They signed Gabriel Mek from Grêmio, who hasn't even played 1 game at a senior level. When Chelsea spent big on Paez and Estavio, I understood it. Those 2 guys are unbelievably talented, playing first team football already with superstar potential. If you lock them up early, you could have the next Neymar. It was a risk worth taking, but now Chelsea are paying £20 million for a kid born in 2008 who has only featured for the under 20 teams. It's just ridiculous to pay that much money for a player purely based on potential. There hasn't been enough game time and experience to justify at all what the potential of some of these guys are going to be. Because there's nothing wrong with stacking talent. Even during Roman's time, Chelsea were infamous for this. You guys remember Chelsea's connection to Vitesse? Literally multiple players were getting sent out on loan every single season. But the difference is those players were developing because they were getting playing time, someone else was paying their wages, or at least the majority of their wages, and Roman wasn't overpaying for some of these talented players. I mean, there's a big difference between sending Marco Marin, who at the time people labeled as a German Messi, on loan, versus some of these other players who we haven't even seen them play for the senior first team anywhere. I mean, it also helped that Chelsea was winning in that period, so nobody questioned what they were doing with their youth players. But again, I think the strategy that Roman was doing was very different from what Bowley's trying to do. Bowley's philosophy seems to be to sign super young talented players and develop them into world-class players. It's a strategy that is very common in baseball, a sport that the Chelsea owners are very familiar with. You buy and stack talent, give them long contracts so you have control, and then try and turn them into massive profit. It's a good strategy on paper, but then the real question begins, how are all these young players supposed to develop? Especially in this current Chelsea system when there's no seniority, there's nobody for these young players to look up to. Like the fact that Enzo Fernandez can potentially be a captain for games despite the fact that he only came in 2023 to the club says everything you need to know about the lack of senior figures at Chelsea right now. Bowley is literally treating real football like it's career mode. I remember when Potter was there were reports that some players didn't even have lockers because the squad size was so large. Now they're able to afford these players because they've been very aggressive with selling players, especially academy players. Mount sold, Gallagher on his way out, and now they're forcing Chalobah out as well. Chalobah was literally barred from using Chelsea's first team facilities as the club negotiates his exit. That's one thing you can give a lot of credit to the owners for. They've been able to sell players for pretty good fees. I mean, they got rid of Mount with 1 year left on his contract. They sold Ian Maatson, Omari Hutchinson. Over £1 billion though spent, and it seems like nothing was learned from the previous seasons. Still no fix to the striker issue. All that money spent, and yet Chelsea don't even have a glimpse of a world-class striker. You would think that instead of buying 5 different young players who are unproven for £20 million, they could have maybe brought the funds together and made one big splash on someone like Victor Osimhen. A lot of Chelsea fans praise Jackson, and while I do see flashes of him being good, especially towards the back end of the 2024 season, I'm not exactly sure Chelsea can be an elite club with him as the main striker. Maybe if he becomes more clinical, this is a different conversation, but I think Chelsea would be at their best if they maintain Jackson as a backup striker, but then have an elite other number 9 who's even better than Jackson as the starting guy. Then I think you have the level of depth that a truly elite club like Chelsea would have had back in the day. While Chelsea had a strong end to the season, you gotta keep in mind that they were pretty much mid-table for the majority of the year. And this was without European football because they had finished 12th the season before. And it's all because of the owners. The managerial carousel that they have started hasn't helped the squad at all. Going from Tuchel to Potter to Pochettino, Chelsea continued their managerial carousel that was prevalent even under Roman. Mutually parting with Pochettino never made sense to me. He helped them finish 6th in a season where there were so many injuries and was finally developing some momentum and relationship with the players. I'm not saying he was necessarily the best man for the job, but I feel like you at least back him for another season based on how he ended the 2024 season. Now they bring in Maresca, who while coming off the back of getting Leicester promoted, is only entering his second ever job as a head coach. It's a massive risk. Even some Leicester fans were disappointed with the Italian after Leicester almost blew getting promoted despite being at the top of the table for such a long period of the season. Now Maresca is in a role that he is still new in and has to manage a locker room full of new players who also have no existing rapport among each other. It's like when your school would host tryouts for football. There's so many new players coming in and leaving, there's no way to establish a long-standing relationship and rapport. Feel like you need a big name with a lot of respect to be able to develop a culture in this current Chelsea side, not necessarily a guy who is still new to his role. The way these Chelsea owners are acting, it's like an addict trying to get his next high, and his high is coming from signing new players. When Samuel's deal with Atletico fell through, Chelsea immediately moved on to João Felix. 2 completely different profiles. Why would you go for one if the other one fell through? Is it just because they both played for Atletico? They got Palmer to sign a contract extension, but what's stopping him from forcing a move if things don't change in a few seasons? I wouldn't want to see Palmer on United or Arsenal in a few seasons, but time travels quickly. If things don't improve in 1-2 seasons, players are impatient. They only have so long in the peak of their careers. Palmer's not going to want to stand around and play in a Chelsea side that is just constantly recycling managers and players. If the owners truly respect Palmer and his ability, they will help him out. Get him players that can immediately help the first team, guys that complement Palmer's playstyle. If they don't, the future of Chelsea doesn't look great. One player who would have immediately improved this Chelsea side would have been N'Golo Kanté. To see how good the French midfielder was in his prime for Chelsea, helping him win the Champions League in 2021, you have to check out this video right here.